Welcome back to the Beyond the Buckets. I'm happy to have Coach John Diatte, Valley Christian Baseball. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can share some things.
Well, I'd like to start out with a bang. Give a 3-minute quick synopsis of who you are and how you got to where you're at right now.
Well, that's a long, I don't know, hopefully I can get it in 3 minutes. Yeah. But long story short is that I've been a Warrior for a long time. I've always wanted to be a coach. It goes back to when I was 8 years old. I kind of jokingly tell the story. We would be playing touch football in the front yard or down at the corner. And I'd always want to be John Madden. Now, how John Madden got to play in the actual game, I really don't know how that all worked out, but I made it work. He was always my hero, and I kind of loved when the camera was on him. And I think that was my first introduction into coaching. And coaching just has kind of been a part of me ever since. It's always what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach, and I wanted to coach at some level. At first, I thought I was going to be a football coach, obviously, because of the introduction there with John Madden and being a lifelong Raider fan. I wanted to coach football, and I thought I'd be the eventual football coach here at Valley Christian. But God had other plans for me. I was actually hanging out with football coaches at San Jose State, trying to cultivate my craft in the football world. And God opened up the baseball job here at Valley Christian. We were really small at the time. We started with 10 jerseys and 5 pairs of pants. And I kind of took that program over really in the small stages. We were a really small school at the time. And it's kind of grown. It's grown. God provided great mentors and great administration. He's taught me a lot along the way, and it's been a fun journey to get to this point. The story goes that somebody asked me when I first started coaching baseball here at Valley, would I use this as a stepping stone for something better? And in my naive coaching mentality at the time, being a young person, I said, no, I'm not going to use this as a stepping stone. I want this job to be the job that everybody else wants to have. And years later, by God's gift and a lot of hard work, it's a fun place to be.
For sure. I think your last comment there really resonates with me, because you have to make wherever you're coaching or wherever you're at, the big time. And so many people are focused on what's next or the next job, but they aren't really watering their lawn to make it green where it is. And you've obviously had a really terrific career, over 600 wins and one of the best, coaches, not only just in the state, but in the entire country. But what is one thing that people might not know about you? They may see all the wins or the success that you've had, but something that, from the outside perspective, they may not know.
I would say that probably be the amount of time I spend with our athletes, just developing interpersonal relationships. If you come to one of our practices, one of my goals in practice is to bring intensity, energy, and excitement to a practice. I also want to that's my time to push kids out of their comfort zone. And so you may come to a practice and watch our practice, and what you'll see is maybe someone who looks a lot like a tyrant, somebody who's pushing and pushing and pushing on his athletes, and you don't understand that pushing is allowed because of the time that I've spent with our athletes developing the interpersonal relationship. Or you may come to a game and just see the competitiveness that comes out of me, and not know that, hey, he spent countless hours with his athletes developing an interpersonal relationship. I think that team is the most important thing that we develop, but you can't develop team without first developing those interpersonal relationships and making sure that you understand and know your athletes.
Well, that brings up a great point. And the interpersonal relationships that you're building with your players is the culture, right? You are developing these individuals as young men, but that is shaping the culture for the entire program, which, to to a lesser extent or to a higher extent is based around excellence. So the reason why you're able to push these athletes to their max is because you are trying to reach excellence, or you're trying to get them to reach their sense of excellence. And everybody's going to be different. It may be different for Eddie Park as far as his excellence, or Steven Zobak, but it may be different for another athlete, but you're trying to push them to that. So speak about your culture and how you've developed that over the years.
So one of obviously culture is a buzzword in the coaching community right now. One of the things that I like to define is or talk about is the fact that I think that we've been developing culture, and for a person like me, for this is my 32nd year, I've been developing a culture or building a culture within our program for all 32 years. We just use different words. We were always building team or building community, and now culture is that buzzword. And but the idea of the guys understanding what the program is about, that's what culture is, right? They get what their expectations are, being a part of the program. And I think that we have to set that bar high for them. I think the expectations have to be set extremely high. Vince Lombardi said that the pursuit of perfection is what we're after, right? The pursuit of, he said, if we're pursuing perfection, we may catch excellence along the way. And I think for us, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a perfect program. Now, obviously, just like being a perfect Christian, that's not something that we're ever gonna attain, but maybe along the way, we grab excellence, and that's what I'm looking for. And developing that within our athletes and getting them to understand that what we really want from them is their very best. Now, you made a good point earlier that it's all going to be different, right? The expectations aren't different, but the gifts, talents, and abilities that God gives individual people, individual athletes, they're all different. The problem is sometimes we want to get outside of those gifts, talents, and abilities. We want the gifts, talents, and abilities that somebody else has. I've always believed that one of the things that we need to do is I need to find the gift, talents, and abilities of my players and cultivate them and make sure that they fit into that puzzle somehow. You're not always going to have a team that's centered around the same strengths, but you can still win. You can still have an opportunity to win if you get the right people in the right place and they understand what the end goal is. And I'm also a person who's not afraid to talk about winning. For me, we develop practice plans, we develop culture, we develop teams, because on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays for us, we're going to put the uniforms on. And when we put the uniforms on, we're putting those uniforms on to go out and compete and to win. Now, that's not the overall encompassing goal of our program. There's life lessons, and there's developing character, and there's developing the individual. The individual is extremely important to me, as I said earlier. We need to develop those interpersonal relationships, but let's be straightforward on this. When we put those uniforms on and there's somebody in the other dugout, our objective is to go out there and score more runs than them. And if we could score more runs than them, then we're going to win. And that's a part of our culture too. This is a long conversation. We develop a team culture. We have 7 points within our team culture. I have the guys posted above their locker so that they see it every day. But let me just read you real quick the top portion there. Pursuing our dreams and ambitions while daily enhancing our God-given gifts, talents, and abilities. That's right at the top. That's our main goal, the main focus of our culture. And obviously the winning and the competitiveness and overachieving.
I want to interject because I want to get to the rest of that list, but how are you able to make sure that everybody's understands their role? Because we all do have other gifts and abilities, to your point, but for so many people, the self-awareness isn't there, especially when dealing with young athletes. Me in the basketball space, I may have a kid that is better suited playing another position and not shooting like Diana Taurasi or Steph Curry, right? But they're better suited to fit the team dynamics, maybe around the basket because of their size and their ability and those sort of things. How have you been able to manage that, especially with so many different players and you can only play 9 at a time, but you have 18 to 22 guys on a roster. How have you been able to do that? Because you've obviously been able to do it very successfully.
I think communications is the key. I spend a lot of time talking about gifts, talents, and abilities, and saying it over and over again. And one of the examples that I give, I kind of developed a different thought around the whole David and Goliath, story in the Bible. There's a miracle there, and God created it. But for me, He created it in David long before the Goliath and David confrontation came about. He gave David gifts, talents, and abilities that would allow him to defeat Goliath. Now, if David were to go out there and stand toe-to-toe with Goliath at 9 feet, 10 feet tall, way stronger than David, if David tried to stand toe-to-toe with him and just swing a sword, David probably wasn't going to be the successor there. But because God gave him gifts, talents, and abilities, one of speed, one he's able to be pretty accurate with a slingshot. He gave him those gifts, talents, and abilities for that one moment. And we try to get across to our athletes that those gifts, talents, and abilities that they've been given, they need to put to use. Now, obviously, I get a lot of guys, and the story I like to tell is every kid that comes into our program thinks that he's going to start at shortstop for us. Now, I have 8 other positions that, people need to fill. I can't play 8 guys at shortstop. So we start to develop and find the gifts, talents, and abilities that those kids have, and we try to put them into the right spots in order for us to be successful. The first thing that we do, pitching is so important. Those individuals with a live arm who have great velocity, we try to identify them. We try to cultivate them and teach them how to pitch. Now that might have been the guy might have been the starting shortstop for his entire life, but now he may be our number 1 pitcher because we've identified him in that way. So again, just convincing or getting kids to understand these are your gifts, talents, and abilities. And with all the technology that we have now at our disposal, we can more easily show them or prove to them this is where your gifts, talents, and abilities lie. And we want to cultivate them. We want to bring them forward. We want you to be the best you on the baseball field that you can be. And then again, that comes from them trusting us. They have to trust us, and that comes from the interpersonal relationships that we've developed with them.
3 great things to that. Number 1, building the trust by developing or spending time and cultivating their relationships, like you mentioned. Number 2 was showing them, okay, this is what you would actually be good at, or this is why you're not so good at that. And then the third one is just using them to whatever they can do best for the entire team. I think that's really good. Oh, I forgot the communication and just communicating with them what, not only the individual's goal is, but the team goal is to quickly shoot off the other 6.
So that's at the top. The other 7 is a desire to serve God and others, putting the team first, extreme hustle and relentless work ethic, mental and physical toughness. And there's an accountability that comes with that too. A disciplined process, part of our habits and our rituals. Effective leadership makes a big difference. That leadership that, when it's effective, it can propel a team. A desire to be set apart. Now, this is not elitism, and I think a lot of people get confused with that. This is a servant's attitude. It's servanthood. Being set apart is different than, hey, look at me and puffing out your chest. It's being set apart. Am I willing to be a servant? Am I willing to have that servant's heart? And then the last one is to work hard, to compete, to lead, and do things the warrior way. And again, this is just a part of our program, but if kids walk into the clubhouse every day, look at their locker and see that this is what we're about, hopefully they're taking it out to the field, or at least one portion of that on a daily basis, something that they can focus on, during practice and develop a part of our culture. Then at the bottom, I go back to the effective leadership. What is an effective leader? Effective leader is when your best players work the hardest, and are the best models of what? The culture that's above that. And we try to strive to let every kid know that, you know, you're all leaders. We don't have team captains. You know, I have a group of people who I kind of use as a group or a coalition to be able to come in and talk to me and tell me things or communicate with me on how things are going with the team. But everybody on the team is a leader. Everybody on the team is a captain. And we really want to hold each other accountable for being the best that everyone can be.
So what I really want people to understand is that list of standards that you are requiring for your guys had nothing to do with winning, but because of those standards, it equals wins. So it's, if we do all these things, then we will win baseball games and hopefully be, you know, better people and better leaders and, you know, down the road, better fathers, all of that because you went through the program. I love Bill Walsh's book, and he says the score will take care of itself no matter what. It always does. Even, you know, you may lose by 1 run or whatever it may be, but the score always takes care of itself in the end. And whether that is the game on the field or the court or the game of life. And your second point is the one that is super important. Can you read that one for me one more time? Number 2.
Extreme hustle and relentless work ethic.
No, number 2.
A desire to serve God and others.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's actually the first one at the top. I have some other things, the way that it's set up, but and I might not have explained that all that well. But yeah, a desire to serve God and others, putting the team first. Again, the thing that we do most as coaches is build team and get kids to understand that putting the team first is the most important goal for our team. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the individual is unimportant. The individual is extremely important, but in the team concept, you know, I think the secular world calls it the golden rule, but we look at it as the New Testament law, and that is that we're going to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. We conveniently come last in that whole equation. Again, not that we're unimportant, not that we should not love ourselves, but that we should love others first, that we should put God first in our life. And I think that as a team, if we can understand that and see that the person next to us is more important than I am, I'm playing hard for someone else. I'm practicing for someone else, not just for myself. Of course, I'm practicing to make myself better, because collectively, when we all get better on the practice field, we're going to be a better team when it's time to display ourselves on game day. But just understanding the importance that the other person plays in your life and being willing to give to them. And again, that servant's attitude. If I can have that servant's attitude, I'm going to be a better person.
Man, if we could just have that as a society, we would be such in a better place. But moving on, switching topics just a little bit, or, you know, turning it over for a double play. Tell me a little bit about coaching really talented players. You've had players that have been high draft picks. You've had players, multiple players go Division I, even make it to the big leagues. Tell me about that process. Can you really coach these high level players the way you want? And what has been your process?
You know, we've only had one big leaguer, and I know that there's some more coming. We've had some really successful years in the past, and past few, and a lot of great players. But one of the things that I think that we've been real fortunate is we've had amazing high school athletes. And when you get an amazing high school athlete who's bought into your program, that's the number one thing is he's bought into being a warrior. And doesn't matter what his talent, ability, gifts, talents, and abilities are. If he's bought into being a warrior, then we've got a kid that we can mold and start to cultivate and become a better player within our scheme, within our program. And again, when you're putting team first, that's the first obstacle that you've got to overcome, because if that player who has great talent or is a great high school player sees himself above the team, then we're going to have some conflict. There's going to be some conflict there. So again, the communication becomes so important. Setting the standards and the expectations are so important. communicating those expectations. Again, setting that bar as high as you possibly can, and then hoping that the guys grab excellence along the way towards that bar, getting the kids to understand, getting the guys to understand as a team, as individuals, and then collectively as a group, that the team is most important, allows us to push our young people out of their comfort zone sometimes and push them towards those goals. And then you don't have the problems of individual egos getting out of control within the clubhouse. Now, that's not to say that we haven't had those issues, because I think every team and every program from time to time, we all struggle with that. But having the ability to look back at our team culture, or looking back at our expectations for that individual when we're communicating with them as a coaching staff, we have some common ground, something that we can go back to. And again, loving that person through those hard times is something that I think comes with maturing as a coach. At first you see it as conflict, and then we see it as growth, right? As you get older, you start to see that as I'm just helping this person grow through a tough time. But when they do decide that they get it, they get that being a warrior is the most important part of being in our program, then we start to take off. And I think that the best answer to your question is just continuing to develop the person as a team player, as a teammate, being the best teammate that he can be, allows us to, kind of put that umbrella, the warrior umbrella, over them. And you lose the struggle of, if I get the question, of, elite players playing for their elite self. It becomes them playing for the team. And then I think that they begin to take off as individuals too, because that servant attitude takes over, and they really understand what it means to work hard, to give maximum effort. They become a better player.
No doubt. And the two things, again, come back to the relationship piece, that time investment, as well as, just the communication aspect. So it's amazing how those things always interject into everything that's going on. And at the end of the day, if you're really good and your team isn't very good, you're not going to get the appreciation or accolades from the outside, because if you're really good, you should be helping your team get better, right? And that's the reason why all the MVPs in most of the sports are coming from the teams that win a lot. And, it's no coincidence that happens. Tell me about
great players make their teammates better. If they're a great player and they're making their teammates better, then the team's going to be better. And I think that gets lost a lot of times.
Right. Absolutely. Tell me about coaching at the WCAL. I obviously coach on the girls basketball side, and it is very competitive. Every single night, any team can beat you, and you have to be extremely prepared. And you've been doing it for a long time now. Tell me how it's been for you and just that competitive nature within our league.
I've had the privilege of being in a lot of leagues. We started out in the Christian Private School League, and then we worked our way through the Blossom Valley Athletic League, starting at the bottom and moving to the top, and then eventually into the WCAL. And one of the first things that I realized right away by competing in our league was that, you're never quite as good as you think you are, but you're also never as bad as that last loss makes you feel. And the perseverance, the ability to persevere through a league season and get to the end and understand that, if you're successful at the end of that league season, you've done a lot. You've accomplished something, because you're, like you said, it is a grind. There are weeks when you're facing 2, maybe 3 Division I pitchers, because of the way that the league schedule is set up. And your hitters have to be ready for that. They have to be willing to get to that next at bat if they've had a poor at bat, or even if they've had a good at bat, that next at bat's going to be just as tough. So again, coaching in our league is it's highly, as you said, it's highly competitive. One of the other things that we have is the distance that we travel throughout our league. We're the most southern team, being in South San Jose, but you're playing, three teams. We'll play 3 games in the city, and you're going through. It feels like you're going into another world sometimes. We'll go up. It could be 75 degrees, 80 degrees here in San Jose, and we go up to Reardon, which is it feels like you're right on top of the ocean. I know that that's not exactly true, but it could be 55 degrees, and the wind's blowing straight into your dugout. It could be a little misty. It feels like you're getting rained on, but
it's like the old candlestick, right?
Yeah.
Just like it.
And the wind's blowing, and they do a good job, and they play hard. It's just it's a different environment, and the kids have to be ready to be able to compete every time they're on the field. And I know that you see that in the basketball league. But if you're not willing to compete every time that you're on the field, if you think that there's going to be an easy game, that's the day that you're going to take a sobering bus ride.
Absolutely. You've been a national program probably the last decade now, and everybody looks up at where you're at in the baseball world and says, man, if I had that job, or whatever the case may be. And especially being a private school as well, I would say that we do have more resources than some other places, and we are blessed in that aspect. But that doesn't mean that because we have resources or really good players or great people around that we don't have challenges as well. There's so many challenges. I've talked to, top level elite high school coaches, college coaches, you name it, on this podcast, and we all have challenges. What have some of the challenges been for you, as you have come to national prominence?
I think the challenges for coaches are all, it doesn't matter, what program you're in, whether it's, basketball or football or baseball. I think as coaches, we all have to solve some similar problems. Are your players going to be motivated? Now, there's always a talent issue, right? It's obviously when you're more talented, it's easier to cover up mistakes. But the motivational side of it, are we going to continue to be motivated, and are we going to continue to be compelled toward success? And I think if you take those two things, if you try to diagnose them and you develop your culture around them, and then you try to, you coach and you practice towards them, you're going to be in a better situation. But I think that every coach has to solve those two problems. Are your players going to be motivated enough, and are they going to be challenged or be willing to challenge themselves to be successful? And, again, then you have to develop your culture and have your practices designed around that. But those are the two main things. As we've come through the leagues, and, now now that we're, again, I don't know if national recognition is the correct way to say it, but when you've had success, continuing to want to be successful is obviously one of the motivations. But it's real easy sometimes for the kids and for the coaching staff to be complacent. And that's one of the things that, that I've really challenged myself with. My background's not all successful. I've had a lot of challenges along the way. And, when I wake up in the morning, I still see that person that's being challenged and isn't successful. People make fun of me and tease me sometimes. They say, well, John, this about yourself, or that about yourself. And I don't see it. I still see myself as someone who's trying to prove to everyone that I can do this job. And that's something that motivates me daily. And I think that, when you get to a point of having some success, that's the point at which you start to make some decisions. Are you going to be complacent? Or are you going to continue to be motivated and finding motivations in your life that will allow you to continue, to grow and to want to be successful? One of the things is being a lifelong learner for me. I want to continue to learn the game, to continue to develop, around the game. And when I become complacent, I think that's the time for me to kind of hang it up, or maybe go find another job where I can, be rejuvenated and motivated.
For sure. I love that. Being a lifelong learner is something that if you're not growing, you're dying. And, you're clearly trying to continue the success you've had, but you also touched on the failures as well. How was it when you first started? Because it wasn't like this. I mean, Valley wasn't in the same position it is now when you first originally took over. So what was it like when you were building? And for people that may want a quick success story, like that doesn't happen. Like, it's not going to be an overnight success. I would say it takes a minimum of 10 years to get to where you feel like, okay, cool. And then that's where it really gets hard. I'm in that same space right now where we've been at it 8 years now, and we've had some success, some winning and stuff like that, but we haven't got over to that hump, and that's the biggest one. So I love the process. I'm a builder by nature, but how was it for you when you were first getting started? Because it just doesn't happen, like I mentioned.
I think that we were fortunate, or at least I was fortunate, in that we started in a lower league, and we got to see we had the opportunity to see small successes as we worked, we grew. Winning a league championship in the Christian Private School League, winning the West Valley Athletic League, and then moving through the Blossom Hill Athletic League. Those small successes and greater successes as they came, allowed me not to get discouraged. But I would challenge our programs and always try to play above it, try to play our preseason above that. And I continue to do that now, trying to play games nationally or at least statewide, and be challenged with against teams or play teams that may be ranked higher than us, maybe a more storied program, so that it continues to be challenging for us and for myself. But failure is one of those things I think we all have to learn how to deal with. And I think that we, as a society, we've kind of tried to make people comfortable. And then, young people don't learn what it's like to deal with failure. And of course, baseball is a great game of failure. 3 out of 7 or 3 out of 10, you fail 7 times, and you're supposed to be pretty good. That doesn't work in the rest of the world. So teaching kids how to deal with those failures, teaching kids how to lose. Of course, I talked about the fact that when we put the uniforms on, we want to win, but we don't always win. And when we do lose, how do we put those uniforms back on and get back on the field with that same attitude, with the same thought process, the same desire to be successful? Those are things that I think we need to teach kids and cultivate within them. And it was something I had to learn as a young coach, because losing really does wear on me. It's a tough thing. I sleep better, literally sleep better on the nights when we win than in the nights the nights when we're not successful and we lose. And that's something I've had to learn how to deal with as an adult, because it'll take over my thought process and my attitude and some of my demeanor. And teaching kids also how to deal with that, I think is a big part of what we do as coaches. But to get back to the question, I think that the small successes, finding small successes along the way that allow you to hang your hat or your success hat, on them and be able to look back. Anytime you can look back, on your program and say, hey, this was a defining moment, and share that with the kids. Hey, we're looking to propel further on from this. I think that that's something that you have to have, and you have to cultivate within your history, the history of your program. We hang all of our dog piles. Our CCS dog piles, there's pictures of those dog piles in our clubhouse, and I put them where the kids can see them. And then I have a blank one with the year, the date above it, because the date's above all of the other dog piles, but it's a blank. It's a clean white piece of paper with the year above it. The picture doesn't hang there yet. We're playing for that dog pile. That's what we want. I want to be able to put this team, this team's dog pile, a picture of it on the wall somewhere. And of course, dog piles are the whole team, right? The kid that doesn't get to play much, he's in the dog pile. He's the guy, he's the first guy out of the dugout, and he's getting into that dog pile. And I love seeing pictures of that person with a huge grin on their face, because it probably, let's face it, all athletes want to play, but that kid doesn't realize he didn't play, when he's in the middle of that dog pile. And that's what's so special for me, is that, you get all 28, all 30 guys, they're in that dog pile. That's the best team pick.
Right, for sure. One of the things, while you were talking about, some of the losses or some of the painful defeats that you've had, I was reading something, and there's two types of coaches: the coach that is humble, or the coach that is going to get humbled. And it's so true, because you can be riding high on wins and loss, all these wins, and then that big loss comes, and it's just really debilitating. But you need to be humble in your triumph as well as your defeat. And if you're not, you're in for a rude awakening, because we've all had our dose of medicine, and there's no team that is immune from losing at some point. Look at any long streak. Look at UCLA back in the day. Look at De La Salle football. Look at, the UConn women's basketball team. You name it. If you got a really long streak where it's like, 60 plus games or whatever it is, you better be humble in all those wins, because you're for surely going to get humbled at some point. Nobody wins every day or every game or every contest.
I could share this, that there's never been a time when we've lost that I've sat on the bus or sat in my office and thought to myself, oh yeah, but I have X amount of wins. The only thing that I could think about during that time is, should I have taken the pitcher out earlier? Could I have said something to my hitter that would have made him more prepared to face that pitcher? I always try to look inside. I never rely on the past, and I think that all good coaches kind of look to the future, and how are we going to get over this loss and make our team better, or make an individual better. But again, like I said, I don't think that I've ever sat in my office chair after a loss, a big loss especially, and thought to myself, well, but I still have X amount of wins. It's that one loss that just, irks me and kind of is the overriding thought at that moment.
Which feels better, the wins or, well, I'll say this, the wins, what lasts longer in your mind? The wins, the big wins, or the big losses?
Yeah, I love the fact that, over the last 22 years, we've had the opportunity to play in 11 Central Coast Section championships. We ended the season on the last day of the season, and that's always been something that I'm extremely proud of. When we win on that last day, those wins last, obviously, the thoughts of them and the exhilaration from them, they last a long time. But during the season, it's that loss, obviously, that stays with you longer than the win. When we win and you're being successful and you're winning, you're on to the next one, right? You've won, you try to enjoy the win that night, but the next day at practice, you're back at it. You're trying to figure out how you're going to beat the next team. You're developing practice plans, you're developing a plan for the game, you're developing a pitching plan, and you're on to the next one. Whereas the loss kind of sticks with you for a little bit longer. It kind of rides with you until you can get that next win. But like I said, when you're playing on that last day and the success of the season culminates on that last day, there's nothing more exhilarating than that.
For sure. I know we got to wrap up here shortly, but tell me about you just mentoring other coaches. I know that's been something that has been on your mind. You obviously have a lot of expertise, and you have reached out to younger coaches in the area to, fellowship and, talk the game and try to further the game. I'm a big proponent of furthering whatever your community is, whether that's basketball, baseball, football, your PTA. I think when you can bring ideas to the table, and you talk about them and you strengthen everybody within the group. So tell me about that little that sort of process you've been doing over the last couple of years.
You know, I think I shared earlier that I don't see myself as someone that has a whole lot to offer other coaches. And in other words, I don't wake up in the morning and think, well, I've got all this knowledge I have to impart to other people. I really don't see myself that way, and it's tough for me to get to that point. I really enjoy when coaches reach out and ask questions, and hopefully I have a solution for them. But lately I've been trying to reach out to more coaches. I think that it's important for us as older coaches to reach out and at least share the experiences that we've had. You know, the old Israelites would sit at the gates of the city, and the younger men would come and listen to them. And that's always kind of stuck with me. And now that I'm that old guy, maybe I can sit at the gate someplace and share some experiences that I have. Not that not that I've got incredible amounts of knowledge, but the experiences, again, the failures and the successes have both been there throughout my career. And if I can share those with young coaches, especially, one of the things is, and you alluded to it earlier, is how long this really takes and how much energy and excitement you have to bring to it, and the things that you're willing to do in order to do this job, I think are important. And I think as younger coaches come through, things seem to be little bit easier, or maybe not as tough. The experience might not be as tough, and to share some of the experience, like changing sprinklers, or letting them know, you have to ride the drag. I mean, you're the guy, right? If your field's going to look good, you're the one that has to take care of it. How much time are you willing to put in, and how much effort and energy are you willing to put in to doing this job is one of the things that I really want to get across to young coaches. And that has nothing to do with wins and losses or the mechanics of coaching. It's just, are you willing to work hard and put the time in and give young people the effort and excitement that they deserve?
No doubt. As we wrap up, I'm asking everybody recently if there's one person that I should bring on the podcast, who would it be and why? And before you say it, you can say The Rock for all I know, but you have to make the connection too if it's somebody noteworthy.
Yeah, there's and you didn't put this on the question sheet, so this is kind of getting me by surprise, but. One of the great coaches in our area is a guy by the name of Mike Luna. And Mike has been around for a long time, but he's a technician. So, his conversation with you will be on the technical side of it. He's a person that, again, willing to give of himself to young people over a long period of time, willing to invest in young people, willing to work hard at his craft. And again, just a technician on the coaching side of it.
Well, you got to make that connection. My favorite podcasts are the ones that, really don't involve too much basketball, because I get so much knowledge. But the one thing that I found is, in all these great people that I've been communicating with, the structure is pretty much the same. Now, I would say the ingredients are the same, but how they use them is so different and so beautiful at the same time. And I just love your perspective, man. You've had a great career, not just triumphs, a lot of struggles, and people really got to understand that is a critical piece. Like, you have to struggle at some time, at some point, for you to get beyond that and grow. That's the only way you're going to do it. So anybody looking for a microwave path to success, they're in for a rude awakening. But I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your insights. I think the people that don't know you are gonna love it. The people that do know you, obviously, are gonna love you anyway, because you're just a great person. So I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. Go Warriors.
Go Warriors.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.